Hello there, Jim Dramatic here. Well, I guess I'm not dead, despite how it may seem from my very frequent upload schedule. I just wanted to make a one-off video for you all, but I can't promise this will be a recurring thing. But for those who are reading the title of this video and questioning why I'd ever do this, let me explain. Series 2 of Robot Wars is, in my opinion, the worst series overall. Do I have a lot of nostalgia for it? Absolutely. But unfortunately, it doesn't excuse how bad the series truly is. From its terrible and inconsistent gauntlet and trials, the lame as hell fights, and the focus of the series still not being robot combat, unlike its successor. It's very nostalgic to me considering it was the first one I ever saw, so as a result, I feel I must defend a decent majority of the robots in the series and what they brought to the table. And what better format to do it than in a ranking video? Mind the ground rules before we kick off this list. Firstly, this is my opinion, and while what I say is always right, you may not agree with it. I mean, you're wrong, but thanks for listening regardless. Secondly, any detrimental comments I make towards robots are never directed towards the roboteers themselves. I appreciate anyone who wants to make a robot and is willing to put one on TV for me to laugh and make fun of. So, I've got to give them some credit for that. And the show aired almost 30 years ago, so if you're still salty about a loss from that long, I recommend making a cake about it. Lastly, how good a robot is won't always tell me how high it's going to go on the list. I might like a design, personality, or other aspects to place it higher. Then probably a robot you consider a lot better. Did I steal this idea from Schaffrillas? Yep. Do I regret making this video? I don't know. I've not edited this one yet, so let's see how it goes with every Series 2 robot ranked.
Disappointment in the game of life!
To decide what was going to be the worst robot in this series, I had to really think about it for a long time. I consulted robot experts, philosophers, and the greatest minds working in the industry today to land on a perfect answer. And when all was said and done, it's Brute. It's Brute. It was always Brute. Brute is one of the few robots in Series 2 that I generally have nothing positive to say about. From its boring black brick of the design, the weedy spring-powered weapon of a metal bar, I mean, an unce, and its wooden wheels that Matilda found very tasty indeed. It just sucks, and the team are clearly so embarrassed they left before Philippa could interview them. I wish I could forget its existence, but sadly it lands right at the bottom of this list today.
Remember Alf? He's back! In pod form.
This robot only goes higher than Brute because it had a cool tiger stripe colour scheme, and that's it for the positives. Tender Caress could not only drive in a straight line, it couldn't do anything right, meaning it barely functioned in either of the rounds it made it to. Coupled with the fact that it had a face on the rear instead of the front always confused the hell out of me. I can never fully put into words why this robot annoyed me so much, it just does. Maybe it's the fact that it somehow made it past the gauntlet in an already underwhelming heat also hurts my soul, but regardless, nothing makes me want to remember this robot ever again.
Purple is my favorite drink!
It's a purple parallelogram. What? You wanted more insightful commentary on why Angel of Death sucks? Its saw stuck millimeters out the chassis. It was as slow as my grandma getting out of a settee, and was the sole reason Tendergrass made it through the gauntlet. I don't want to waste any more time on this travesty. Next.
They came bounding over.
I love Dominic Rott's enthusiasm. He generally had one of the best attitudes for one of the kids on this show, despite how badly his robots performed. And I must give him credit for that. However, Rottweiler was still a cumbersome design with extremely high ground clearance and couldn't even go up ramps, ultimately leading to its getting its embarrassing minus 2.8 meters in the joust. It was entertaining to watch the Killot slice through one of its spikes, but the design itself left a lot to be desired.
Oh my.
You know, it's nice that 3 generations of the same family made Flirty Skirty, and I think that's very sweet. And Flirty Skirt itself does bring a unique weapon to the series with those lifting skirts, an idea that I believe has never been brought back again, and for good reason. Look, despite its uniqueness, Flirty Skirty is just a chevroned box at the end of the day, and coupled with its abysmal top speed of only 2 miles an hour, it wasn't very entertaining to watch. The best thing it did on camera was being annihilated by Sakilon in its only arena fight. Their future endeavours with Missile were much more interesting, but this box sadly wasn't. The psychedelic paint job on Rox is the best part of the robot, honestly. Its biggest weakness was its high ground clearance, which was, yeah, a very common thing for this era, but the counterpoint to that is the forklift, its main weapon, wasn't even touching the floor. I'm not even sure exactly how it's supposed to even work as intended if it can't even get into the robot's, apart from Groundhog or something. Just like Rottweiler on the list, its cumbersome nature meant it was never going to be successful in a heat with Roadblock, Onslaught, and even Nemesis. But that colour scheme though, 10 out of 10. Love it.
And your question is, do you know why the L and R buttons are longer?
A while back, Oliver and I placed this robot very high on our top 10 most unique robots list, and I still maintain that. It has a very distinguishable design, with omni wheels at the back and stilt-like legs that can maneuver it up and down to give it a better centre of gravity. Sadly, being unique doesn't mean you're very good. I mean, this robot got way further in the competition than it should have done. I mean, it quote-unquote killed Kill-A-Lot, even though I think he tripped over his shoelaces or something. And secondly, it just kind of bumbled its way through the football with Wizard and Sting breaking down. Hell, its battle against Loco wasn't even very entertaining. It didn't do a lot at all. Shame, it kind of reminds me though, Firestorm came from this robot. Man, they really locked in with this one.
Cruella de Vil, Cruella de Vil.
I have never cringed so hard as a gauntlet performance than Cruella's. It's hard enough to see a competitor fail so miserably, but for it to get a lower score than Rottweiler is just pitiful. I used to make a joke that Philip Martin couldn't drive because he failed in Series 1, and I guess that's true here too. Plus, can you even see the weapon on the back of Cruella? I think the motor powering it was bigger than the saw blade itself. Shame, because I like the simple wedge design and the painted roses pattern look very competently made. This goes so low on the list because it's just painful to watch, and that failed potential really saddens me.
Challenge accepted.
If I had £1 for every time I talked about a robot that couldn't get up a ramp and then went on to get a minor score in the joust, I'd have £2, which is strange because it happened twice. Joking aside, I must admit that when making this list, I never even thought Challenger would be a robot this far down. But re-evaluating the robot itself, I just forgot how bad it was. Its weapon consisted of a small rear saw blade and some tiny milling cutters, awkwardly perched diagonally on the sides, but none of them would have even done anything anyway. Coupled with its mediocre performance and managing to get a negative score in the joust, it didn't put a good show whatsoever. Shame because the robot looks nice for the era of the show, but a halfway decent looking robot can only get you so far in this list, and Challenger definitely plummeted in that regard. Phoenix had all the hallmarks of being an okay robot. It had great speed, a sleek design, and while the spike weapons weren't very effective looking, it had something at least going for it. Shame they decided to put the flimsiest caster on this robot and have it die in every direction besides forwards. This disappoints me, since Phoenix was the robot that went the furthest in the gauntlet, 8.9 meters, without making it to the trials, which is a lot of lost potential there. I kind of like the aesthetics of this one, but for some reason its failed run makes me want to rank it a lot lower. You know, if I had £1 for every time I talked about a robot that couldn't get up a ramp and went on to get a minor score in the joust, I'd have £3, which, in all seriousness, Prometheus gave me very little to talk about. In theory, it's looking competent, but sadly blundered the execution. The saw falling off is probably the funniest highlight from this heat. Sorry, I haven't got much words to talk about, it's just not that interesting. I do like their second robot in General Carnage. It's amazing what a camo paint job and a cool looking grabber claw can do to elevate such a mediocre design.
I couldn't afford a present this year, so I got you this box.
That's what I got you.
Yep, Talos is certainly a robot. By far the most robotic robot that ever did robot, Talos is a basic box design with a rounded front and tiny tusks as weaponry. It did stand out a bit more in its bout against GBH, and if it looked like this throughout the heat, I might have scored it slightly higher. I have nothing bad to say about it. It did what it needed to do, and, you know, that's fine.
Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
I'm not even joking that when I first made this script, I forgot to even include enzyme initially. Thus, I had to go through every single robot to find out which one I'd missed. I think that says a lot about the robot, honestly, and enzyme just speaks for itself. I mean, it's a cool design, I guess, and the team were entirely made out of children, so that's quite rare and very respectable, especially for heavyweights at the time. But me completely missing the entire existence is something I can't let slide. Sorry, enzyme, you're going low.
Stop! You violated the law. Pay the court a fine or serve your sentence. Your stolen goods are now forfeit.
Knowing this team would make one of my favourite robots of all time in the future, in Supernova, is like seeing Harvey Dent before becoming Two-Face. Oblivion is very unremarkable, just being a wedge bot with two prongs as weapons, and a light that could short-circuit the entire machine if it broke while operational. Top-tier engineering, guys! Though this was the same team that in Oblivion 2 that was KO'd in 3 seconds by Sawpoint just rolling over it. Notice I wanted to talk more about other robots than Oblivion itself. I mean, that kind of proves my point, really. Jonathan Pierce describing this robot as a black coffin lid in its very first appearance really makes it dead on arrival. Oh, thank you. I'm here all night. Enjoy the veal. Shumi gets some points from me because I remember how hilariously incompetent it was in doing anything in either of the rounds it participated in. Deciding to just YOLO off the ramp after going so gung-ho at the start and then committing suicide in 10 seconds in the King of the Castle. It's not the worst design in the show, and the fact it was the fastest competitor in the entire series at a startling 30 miles an hour was very impressive, but it obviously did it no favours. These tiny details do endear me a little bit to the robot, making it not a total lost cause.
And I sang dab, dab, double, 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 evil, 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 evil songs. Hell, you know that's how I get along.
Oh look, another robot from that oh-so-specific robots that had much more interesting successors than the original ever was genre. While I really love Wild Thing and the late great Nick Adams for his driving skills and awesome machines, Demon is just so boring. The paint scheme is nice, and I do love the demon face on the front, but it moved at a pitiful 2 miles an hour and had no real notable contributions to the heat. Another example of a robot where the colour scheme was superior to it, though the design and the concept weren't anything bad, so I can't rank it too low.
Panda. Panda, 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 panda.
You know, for a robot called Pandemonium, I don't see many pandas on this thing. Another example of a wedge bot go vroom, Pandemonium was unremarkable throughout and fell victim to the PBZ's ability to completely ruin what could have been the victorious robot against Napalm of all things. The spike weapon does counter what it meant to do, meaning robots won't get up to the wedge very easily, and I swear that wooden base plate on the bottom isn't attached. Is it just me? Just another forgettable robot on this section of the tier list.
Ayunt? What is ayunt? Go! Conjugate the verb to go.
On the surface, Vercingetorix seems like a very typical wedge lifter with some funny Monty Python references on it. I would place it higher, but this thing broke down in every event it participated in. The Gauntlet, the Sumo, and its short-lived fight against Hardvark. The robot never seemed to really work at all, and it's a pity, since it looked alright for the time and had potential. I can't really rank it very highly, despite me liking it to some degree. It could have done a lot better, but that's just how the cookie crumbles.
Well, I'm the Joker, baby!
Havoc is a rather simple design, and is one of the few competitors to incorporate an interchangeable weapon system into the design, which is different, I suppose. I like the Joker-esque decals on the front, and was by far one of the only two robots that was even passable in its own heat. At the same time, though, it doesn't really stand out much in this crowded pool, so I'll place it this low on the list.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
Yeah, I put a robot that didn't make it into the arena this high on my tier list. You knew it was signing up for and watching my content. While the name of this robot is very apt, Pain has some things going for it beforehand. Its auction-powered kinetic stabber weapon looked very decent, and had a lot of potential and was unique. I like the team's ability to take the disaster that unfolded on in good stride, and the strategy for their machine was solid, albeit limited. The tracks looked flimsy, and its slow speed of 4 miles an hour made it wouldn't do much, even if it had worked. Still, though, it had a lot of potential backing up for me to put it this high on the list, so I'll give it some benefit of the doubt.
I couldn't afford a present this year, so I got you this box.
Oh look, another box. But this time at least has triple wheels in the front for some reason. I never really got that choice, but it does mean Tantrum stands out for style points, I guess. A solid build with an okay flail on the front puts it at least mid-tier section on this list. Nothing to write about, but let's just say T2 was a much cooler design.
Technologic.
There's hardly anything to say that stands out about Technophobic, to be honest. In fact, the Series 3 entry of the same name is much better in my opinion. I love the borderline garish neon yellow paint scheme and that lifting ram, which seemed pretty powerful. The Series 2 design in comparison feels a lot more dull and barely noteworthy. It was competent through the heat and had a rather dubious honour being the first robot pitted in combat by an opponent, in this case Killatron.
Egypt bloke!
And,
Is he walking like an Egypt bloke?
While the design of Ramesses II is itself decent, even repurposing the hammer from the previous robot, that's also the issue. I much prefer the look of Scarab as it upheld that Egyptian aesthetic much better, and the paint scheme had a hieroglyphic flair. Ramesses II in comparison appears duller than its predecessor and very slow to boot. Even its intro, it just went forwards in one direction with no real showmanship. It had some notable highlights in its heat, such as performing an impromptu handstand against a brick wall, and standing its ground against Matilda in the joust. However, the robot itself leaves a lot to be desired in terms of looks, and I can't really place it too highly today.
Boring!
Reliable. Solid. Unremarkable. These are adjectives that perfectly encapsulate my feelings on Demolition Demon. Taking the BattleBots philosophy of simply making a design basic, but giving it a metal as fuck name, Demolition Demon worked as intended, and performed the best throughout the heat. So much so that it failed to beat Napalm, in what's considered a very controversial judge's decision. Which is a shame, because it had all the hallmarks of a heat winner, but lacks a lot of flair that makes you want to place it too highly. It's much better than the Series 3 version, so hey, give them credit there.
They're very slowly getting away!
Like Groundhog and Oblivion mentioned previously, the creators of Limpet would eventually make a much better robot in 13 Black, 3 series later. Limpet itself, though, is a basic, trustworthy, and detrimentally simple design. It's got one highlight of Schaffrillas snapping its track for seemingly no reason. Maybe Limpet owed it some money or something? And that was it. In fact, if it were faster, it would have eliminated the then reigning champion Roadblock in an event it should have done well in. Limpet therefore left the competition because it wasn't aggressive enough, which makes its placing here very fitting.
You're going the wrong way!
I'd feel bad if I spent ages building my robot, only to lose because I went backwards in an event that requires me to go forwards. I bet no robot's ever done that before. Oh, I feel sad now. Death Track had some design sense, with those detachable front jaws acting as a pseudo-ramp, though I do feel it may not be effective, but you know, it's fine. I like the robot came out early enough in the show's history that they didn't really know how to make it invertible, so they just stuck giant-ass caster wheels on the back, making the entire robot doing a seemingly downwards dog pose permanently. I like the strange aesthetic of this robot, but it lacks a lot of flair to make it place any higher.
It was the spike in the arena floor!
The unique look of Rampage did it no favours when a simple spiky boy managed to cripple its entire operation and allow the robot on stilts and a fucking wizard hat to get further than it. I will admit, I would be lying if I didn't like the design, though the front of it seemed too wide and it sort of waddles when it drove forwards, and that sort of the rear wasn't very effective. I like the attempt on this robot, and I do feel sympathy for the team being eliminated for such a small problem, but I guess that's life. Loco's an okay robot with nothing really incredibly wrong with it. I mean, I haven't got a huge amount to say, other than it was very unlucky to even be facing Cassius not once, but twice with their next robot in Dundee. Shame, because I kind of prefer Dundee's design over Loco's, but Loco was still decent for the time and probably could have got as far as it could have.
From that night over there, she bested me in combat!
Ivanhoe is a solid, if not very effective machine in the competition. Its combination of a lance and axe contributes nicely to its knight in shining armour theme. Plus, it was sturdy throughout and had little for me to say. The only thing I love about Ivanhoe is the expressions of the team when the robot failed to right itself upon being defeated. It can totally self-right, guys. Look, they pushed it multiple times in the intro to prove it. Comedy gold.
All must answer to the Inquisitor.
The first robot on the show to be named after a Ref Dwarf reference, this Inquisitor is unfortunately not going to erase your existence. I think, anyway. Inquisitor is solid for the time, but does stand out little more by having a large yet useless array of weapons, with a chainsaw and an even more useless flail, and the ability to telepathically destroy Razor's electronics from the inside. They never really officially revealed that secret, though. Plus, the team are great and knew their obvious limits of their robot and were great sports. It's a real shame that Inquisitor 2 wasn't selected for Series 3, because its lifter was decent and the paint job goes hard, I'm not gonna lie. I like it more than it should, but sometimes it's the little details and a nice team that can get a robot going much further on the list than they have any right to be.
3, 2, 1.
Alright, confession time. I think the Plunderbird robots are mediocre, but the team is the real reason anyone remembers them. At least Dietor won fights, and Sacromlot locked in with a good robot in Series 6, but the Plunder Boys never really got their dues. In fairness, Plunderbird 2 is the robot that managed to buck the trend and make it out of the heats. I like the sleekness of the bodywork, it had a very good pushing power for the time, and a wonky aerial. What more can you say? Sadly, Plunderbird 2 lacked something that the team had in spades. Entertainment value. This thing was so slow and dull to watch, and both its fights are pure push fest with nothing to write home about. Shame too, because the team are fantastic. This version was not the best, but it makes this as high for the team alone. By far one of the most unique robot designs in the series. Victor's odd triangular shape, coupled with its large slanted wheels, made it for an odd sight indeed. Not sure how it was going to win any fights with such an awkward design, and I swear it got stuck on everything. But Victor was still an example of how a unique design can be more memorable, and unlike Groundhog, I wasn't endlessly frustrated at how it made it to the battles in this heat. Victor at least had some competency and was decent enough to make it to where it did. It's a shame how the sequel decided to damage itself and flop into the pit under zero pressure.
Why are you like this?
I have no idea how to even describe Aurak's design. The unnecessary caster wheels on the top, the large saw arm that would make it difficult to be invertible, and the huge bicycle wheels that didn't even give it any grip at all. It's quite a mess, though I wouldn't be lying if I didn't say I also liked it. It's still in the middling section of this list, but the team did at least give us a unique design and not another generic box on wheels. Maybe it's not the best thing in the world, but I'm not complaining. Their sequel in Series 3 was much cooler, so I'll also give them credit for that.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
The Parthian shot didn't do anything, but at least they got the robot working, unlike Pain. But why is it this high up? Well, I just think it's neat. The pure scrap aesthetic that oozes off this design is amazing, and one I fully endorse. I can't on good conscience place this any higher than robots that actually worked above this, but I made a compromise myself with the physical design alone. Yeah, did it work? No, but it looked good doing nothing. Just like me. But lads, couldn't you learn from your previous mistakes and get this damn robot working for Series 3? I know it wasn't Flipper, I can see the base plate, don't— You got to listen to your heart, listen to the beat. Maybe I'm suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, but Hardvark may just look like a good robot in comparison to its heat. Not that it's bad. It always stood out for me for being very effective in the meh robots it was against. Hell, half its heat landed in the bottom 5 of this list alone, so its competition was very substandard. Now, this isn't taken away from Hardvark's achievements as well. The team even used layered armour to better protect the internals, and its speed and manoeuvrability were very good, making it top 8 in the entire series. That's no mean feat. The first sit-and-spin robot to appear in the series, Spin Doctor was interesting because it was one of the only competitors to intentionally harm a house robot by defanging Matilda in spectacular fashion. The design overall is simple, yet effective, and while not too successful in combat, it did at least provide some entertainment factor. However, I never understood why they had a chainsaw if its gimmick was to sit and spin. Also, where was that snowplow? I don't see it.
We should take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else!
It's hard to look back at the dinky version of Behemoth here, since it got an immediate upgrade from the transition to Series 3. It did help that the scoop couldn't lift at all, and unlike Cassius and GBH, couldn't actually tip robots over entirely. But I do have a lot of love for the old look, since this is where it all started. To its credit, despite the lack of power in its weapon, the team did make top 8 overall, though its run was rather ponderous and dull at times. I think it was ultimately down to this version's strategy, always consisting of lifting an opponent up, pushing it somewhere else, and then rinse and repeat until Elvis is dead, I don't know. I like the look of the machine, and I appreciate there was a solid foundation for the team's future endeavours, but I can't rank it too high despite how much I love it.
But even armor-piercing bullets can't penetrate Marv Heemeyer's homemade metal and concrete shield.
I've always loved the design of Killdozer and its large lifting blade on the front. It had a lot of potential with that design, and I think it was rather robbed against Ivanhoe with the house robots beating it to a pulp when an atom of its chassis touched the PPZ. The power of its weapon showed that it had something going for it as well, and while it was not the most unique robot on the field, I think it stands out for good reasons and not being terrible. Which isn't much for some robots on this list, let's be honest with you. We didn't see much of the power on display, but it was decent for what we saw. Plus, I kind of prefer it over Razorblade, but only marginally. I feel bad for Sting. Its armor was very solid for the time, and the odd tail in the rear was different, and the ramming spikes looked potent. Shame it decided to outright conk out in the football and allow Groundhog and Wizard to advance. Not saying that Sting would have done well in the heat, I mean, Cassius was here after all, but it looks very well constructed and could have been the heat finalist for sure. The Series 3 version has a lot of nice design to it. That scrap look is really cool, and S3 doesn't need introduction. It speaks for itself. Well done, Sting. You managed to be a good robot in a sea of mediocrity.
Ah! That's a war face!
Just like Vector of Armageddon beforehand, Corporal Punishment also took from the BattleBot school of giving a metal as fuck name to a basic design. The thing that separated Corporal Punishment from other standard wedge bots was its unique scoop. The wedge was more mesh-like and could provide more flexibility than the conventional one. Sadly, this did cause the robot to get stuck on the floor and hinder its mobility, but the idea itself was solid enough, I suppose. Plus, Adam Clark usually made an interesting design for what would normally be simple and by the numbers. That's very respectable. It's much better than the Series 3 design, which looked like a scoop had just been bent in the card right there, and was definitely showing one of the worst fights ever on camera. I mean, that fight is a war crime in its own right.
You are a toy!
This isn't a robot. I think someone's accidentally entered one of those toy cars on a metal shell from Series 1 again. Oh wait, never mind. That's just Onslaught. All joking aside, I love the look of Onslaught. They managed to make a simple wedge design and make it look like a remote control car, all while making its style really shine through. Shame I haven't got a lot to talk about it, because I do love the design, it just is just solid. Very solid indeed. But it's a shame it broke down in its fight against Robot, but at least it was a cool robot. Overall, I just like the design. It's neat, simple, and to the point.
I can deny it no longer. I am small.
Missed potential. That really sums up Caliban, sadly. Being the first ever full-body spinner shown, it had a lot of hype thrown its way and it couldn't deliver. While the flail and the gauntlet was fucking useless, the shell had massive slicing blades on it, which looked very impressive. Its position on this is apparent due to its potential and overall design, but the major thing holding its back is the lack of mobility it displayed. For some reason, the team chose to drive whilst under the influence and attempted to attack Sir Kill-A-Lot. That latter mistake was egregious, especially because Kill-A-Lot was new to the series and had a lot to prove for himself, so beating up a minuscule Caliban was an easy task. At least they showed that 3-meter marker, what for?
You can stay up late, swapping manly stories, and in the morning, I'm making waffles.
Despite being more famous for a certain cheese-themed robot later on, Roger Plant's first endeavour into the robotics scene was an over-engineered oddity, and I just love it. The mule came out of the gate very strong, with pneumatic legs, a forklift, and enough mechanics to make another robot entirely. The respect I have for the mule is very high, despite it not being the most interesting robot to watch. You can see the expertise needed to create such a robot as Willy with Cheese in the future, and it might not have been too effective in battle, but the mule is one that I've always liked for some reason.
And always twirling, twirling, twirling towards freedom.
While Caliban was the first full-body spinner, Whirling Dervish got a decent way into the competition, only losing to the eventual series winner, Panic Attack. And you know what? The team really put on a good show for what was an unconventional design. Took an old car tyre and inverted it, had weapons spin at a decent rate for that early on in the series, and even had a body shell rotating in the opposite direction to the bars. This shows some ingenuity, and for a robot that looked pathetic at first glance, was very innovative and unique. I must give them props. They made a fun machine. Was it successful? Not really, but success isn't the key defining factor in this list, and that's why I love Whirling Dervish for. They achieved what they aimed to do, and they tried their hardest.
Hey, that's pretty good.
While a lot of my praise for this team does lie in its successor Excalibur, Disruptor looks really cool for this early in the series. For the arm that goes 180 degrees to the low wedges and sleek design, I think Disruptor's an underrated machine for the time. It even proved its strength by managing to be one of the few robots to hold its ground against Shunt in the sumo. Sadly, the robot itself wasn't the most interesting to watch in the arena, but I honestly go by pure vibes for this list sometimes, and I like it a lot. Yeah, Excalibur's cooler, but Disruptor has some aesthetic positives that makes me not want to put it any lower.
Aren't you glad I didn't say apple again?
Is it me, or does the orange version of Killatron look like a Magikarp? Maybe it's me, I don't know. Despite not being tickled pink now, Killatron was a decent and welcome return competitor for Series 1, with little notable changes aside from its colour scheme. Heck, the pickaxe was even the same as it had from last year, but the adage of not fixing what wasn't broken does ring true here. Killatron was suitable for the time, with its pickaxe able to do a high amount of damage against Aurak and Behemoth, which was some of the best hits done by this series overall that wasn't done by house robots. I like Killatron, but I've never been totally in love with it. Its existence was stable and steady, making a top 4 finish this time, but its improvements of adding a wedge in Series 4 wasn't enough to make me like it more, and the power creep definitely hit it later on.
This is a primitive device. We must find one with the necessary components to communicate our distress to Ramulak.
I kind of wish David Gribble's first outing as a driver wasn't the unfortunate first round loss in the Gauntlet, but the Series 2 version of Body Hammer has a lot going for it. For starters, it was way faster than its predecessor, and, as seen in the Internet Insurrection, it had enough power to almost upend Dead Metal by simply running under it. Plus, the simple yellow and black colour scheme was much more pleasing than that drab copper sheen from last time. The only real negative were the weapons. The saw barely poked out the chassis, and the flipper, I think, wouldn't have done much in battle, but since it had enough power to drive under robots, I don't think it mattered too much. It was nice to see the team ditch the conical look for the superior design of Pussycat. Certainly a worthwhile trade.
This is all rot. You drove into that pit intentionally.
I love the fact that the GBH team just took Scrapper from last series and flipped it around, even keeping the same saw blades and all. Despite the odd approach, GBH proved to be very effective in combat and managed to flip over both its opponents in the arena. Not even a feat Cassius achieved in its heat. A robot I think was solid, but GBH's only real flaw was its slow speed and lack of flair that other flippers had before it and since. Despite these minor personal issues, GBH showed it was very, very good and advanced for the time, and made it decent way into the competition, only losing in the semi-final pinball stage. I quite like it a lot, and while it's not placing any higher, it does a lot well for what it is.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Dreadnought's black and yellow colour scheme is my preferred look for the robot, to its more grey and sci-fi appearance it had later on. It was also nice to see it work consistently like Series 1, where it broke down in every round. Sadly, they accidentally knocked out the removable link by putting on the shell, resulting in a loss to oblivion of all robots. The beefed up forks were also a nice improvement to the weedy stick-like forks they had previously. A solid design throughout. Dreadnought had a special place for me when I was younger since I always loved it for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it reminds me of futuristic tech or something, or the unique feel of the time. Just made it look nice, and it wasn't just another box on wheels. The thing about Chaos that goes undepreciated is that it was a perfect transition between Robot the Bruce and Chaos 2. It even looks like a sort of Pokemon evolution. I can't be the only one who thinks this. Proven to be both manoeuvrable and powerful, the tiny machine was able to drag Dead Metal into the pit in the tug of war, being the only robot to ever do so. Additionally, Chaos was competent in battle, with its only loss to Mace being due to Matilda's intervention, and George Francis forgetting to put the rounded backplate to help itself right. The one thing I can knock it for in comparison to its successor is, while it was manoeuvrable, it maybe was a bit too manoeuvrable. In a sense, the robot seemed to be very hard to control, and was unable to contain the power of the motors, resulting in it bouncing around the obstacles in the gauntlet and skidding around the arena against Wheelosaurus. These flaws didn't really matter too much, but it was a capable machine with a future looking bright. It may not be my favourite robot in the series, but I can certainly appreciate the solid foundation it laid for the team's massive achievements in the future.
Stay with me.
There was a certain chaotic charm to the first iteration of John Reed's Hertz line, with Killer Hertz always managing to find a new way of slamming itself into whatever was unfortunate to be in front of it. From it getting stuck in forward drive both in its intro and the Skittles, to it being one-hit KO'd against Roadblock for seemingly unknown reasons. While this was foreshadowing for the line's inconsistent reliability with the machine, Killer Hertz would make a decent impact with this incarnation, resulting in it being very distinguishable to me at least. The one thing that I desperately think is missing from this robot was the iconic woodpecker axe that it would have later on. Truly hyperactive and never reliable, Killer Hertz was entertaining to see what it would do next, and was at least memorable enough to place this high on the list, so I'll give it credit.
I like it!
Fun fact, Mace was the very first robot I ever saw in the series. For some reason I missed Napalm's heat, though looking back at it, it was definitely a small mercy. I do generally like Mace due to a lot of its simple and solid aspects being very prominent. Its biggest blunder was choosing the Sentinel for the race-off, resulting in its elimination, but that's more a fault of the team rather than the robot itself. Mace was dependable, able to win fights on its own power, and was one of the most competently built machines in the series. It was never going to be an overall winner, but I do like a bit of Robot being just the perfect power level for that series it was in.
Remember what you said? I'm all talk. I wouldn't possibly go through with it.
The tragedy of the entire talk line can trade its origins back to the very one that started it all, because for a robot that failed to make it past the heat, it sure as hell tried its best. All Talk had the speed and power capable of taking it far, but it came across King Buxton and sadly never got any further in its career. By all accounts, All Talk was a shoo-in to win the heat given its impressive annihilation of Matilda, and defeating Prometheus very easily. It was by far the best robot in Series 2 to lose in the heat final, and their Series 3 version was also amazing and underrated in my opinion.
I will not.
Despite being the winner of Series 2, Panic Attack doesn't have those iconic side skirts it was donned later on in its career, and had a simple yet effective design. The basis for its future successes were clear, and it was admirable that the team entered the robot for charitable purposes, earning more money the further it got through the competition. I guess they earned a wad of cash then, because it won the whole damn series. It had its ups and downs throughout, from beating Shunt in the sumo and being strong in the heat overall, to that nail-biting and unique race-off against Mace, and the acrobatics it displayed in its first gauntlet run. It's clear why it won the series, even seeing off Cassius in the grand final in what was a massive upset at the time. Even now, its victory over Cassius is still shocking given the proven effectiveness of its opponent, and nevertheless, Panic Attack was a certified classic robot that only places this low because of its more simple, boxy chassis, and me just preferring the future versions.
Wizard Ale, made fresh on the mountain by me.
Sometimes a robot can be utter trash, and yet you absolutely adore it for that very reason. While Wizard isn't outright trash, I'd say, it's also by no means a good robot, and yet I have a massive soft spot for this magical nightmare. Its weapons, if you can even call them weapons, consist of some chains and a drill just kind of plonked on the chassis as afterthoughts. Coupled with it being difficult to tell where the front is, the machine looked like a nightmare to control. Plus, who thinks to put a fucking speaker inside the hat? What a mad lad. Maybe the house robots were spooked by it, I don't know. It may seem that I hate Wizard based on my criticisms, but I love the goofiness it extrudes, and it's clearly not meant to be taken seriously. It's a meme bot in all the right ways, through and through, and I can't hate it. The witch looked better later on, but Wizard certainly cast a spell on me. Oh, God, I just wrote that cheesy ass line, didn't I?
Like a cuckoo clock. But on the hour, little Elvis comes out the top and goes,
The king is still alive, and looking much better than that bland black colour he was rocking last series. Elvis this series, however, is amazing. From the much improved Elvis bust on the top of the bodywork mocked up to look like his iconic threads back in the day. I just admire the craftsmanship that went into Elvis and the glow-up he received. The dude is ready to rock and or roll in this attire. You can tell the team captain, Neil Lambeth, worked in special effects, because he nailed the assignment of making an Elvis-themed combat robot. Even if that's a very specific goal. The main thing hindering this robot back from achieving greatness in this ranking is that it was such a chore to watch do, well, anything. From its ponderous pace in the gauntlet to being literally guided by the house robots to even score a fucking goal in the football, meant that Elvis never really got any positive things to do in the heat. Shame, because if it beats up a lot more and just had some entertainment value, it would have been rated a lot higher. Oh well, I still love this old hound dog. God, I just did it again, didn't I? God damn it.
What the bloody hell was that all about?
For a heat filled to the brim with names like Panic Attack, Whirling Dervish, and Corporal Punishment, the mere fact there's also a robot simply called Ron will never get old to me. Ron's compact look really stood out at the time, and its RC car aesthetic and bright red colour scheme made it even more memorable to me, and it still does now. Sure, its sumo run was pathetically hilarious, and the team's overconfidence led to its downfall, but Ron is a bot that I adore for potentially indescribable reasons. Other than that, I just think it's neat.
Poor old David looks about 74, 75, 76. He's a Star Trek fan. Beam him up, Scotty.
It's easy to shit on the napalm robots, and while they get progressively worse and slowly outstay their welcome in the more competitive series of the show, their first attempts at napalm is great for the time. Its sleek wedge, the striking flame pattern, and the unique, if a little cumbersome Mandibles chainsaw combo made it stand out a lot more in more positive ways than which Detonator did last series. The team even managed to prove their worth in the semi-finals after a controversial victory over Demolition Demon by completing the gauntlet in the quickest time. Heck, they were only eliminated from the competition due to the producer's bias of Mortis, and smearing as the latter demanding a retry on the pinball. It's honestly the best version of the robot. So much so they just entered the damn thing, battle scars and all, for Series 3. For some reason. While that was dumb, I do like this iteration, and it gains the award for the most improved from Series 1.
Smashy, smashy.
Both the robot and the team get a lot of crap for being snobs, and spending the GDP of a small island nation and upgrading their machine, but Mortis was very powerful for the time when it was competing. The Tanto blade could pierce through armour, their aggressive driving wasn't directionless, and the sportsmanship they displayed when taking on the house robots at any given opportunity like Cassius was entertaining to witness. Despite what the show said, the Mortis team did not demand a redo for the pinball, but the producers insisted on that because it's their favourite to win. This ended up backfiring on said producers since the team abstained from winning and let Panic Attack take their place in the grand final, so that was extremely commendable. While I do prefer the sleeker black gradient of old, and the lifting arm later on is much better improvement, this series' adaptation of Mortis was still entertaining throughout, and lands at a high position here today.
Road work ahead? Yeah, I sure hope it does.
The reigning champions, folks. The simpler time when some lads from Cornwall could steal some road signs and use them to beat up RC cards. Note, for legal purposes, the team did not steal their road signs. They obviously gathered them via legal means. Please don't go after me. I have a house and multiple hostages in my basement to feed. In all seriousness, it's impressive that the team made such a simple design as a wedge and give it personality. The road signs made it stand out a lot, and the rear saw blade was decent at causing some damage for the time. The team also didn't have a complete cakewalk this time through, with them almost failing to progress past the Skittles and having a much harder time in their second run through the gauntlet. They did fight back and secure a comfortable grand final position, only to lose to Cassius, a worthy opponent in many ways. I've always loved Roadblock for its simplicity and deserved its classic status. Yeah, some people do prefer Beast of Bodmin, I prefer Roadblock, but those winking eyes are funny as hell.
Is it getting hot in here? Is it safe to be wearing that fur? It looks flammable!
Nemesis was the OG, the original.
Are my number one guy.
Its goofy polka-dotted fur coat, the leering grin, and the quintessentially useless weapons carried over from last series, now with lobster claws. Oh my! It's funny to look back at the history, since this was the first series where the robot consistently went up in fire, compared to the quaintness of that tiny little fire it had in Series 1. Now it's being doused in petrol and they're sticking a fucking kebab on it. It's just pure bants right there. While Deitor is the more successful machine, Nemesis is what started it all, and there was framework for that borderline pyroclastic tendency. Plus, this was the early days when you could say
not at all. Burn it, that's what I say. Burn it all to hell.
Damn, wouldn't see that nowadays.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Razor not making the top 10 will probably piss off a certain part of the fandom, but this is my list, goddammit. Razor was very impressive for the standards of Series 2. Even more so than when you look back at the most damage in Series 1 was some ripped Nemesis fur, a little bit of a fire, and some dents on Leebot. Yippee. Razor was the first robot to cause real lasting damage, completely buckling and breaking Inquisitor's flail, and humiliating Shunt by pushing him all the way back to the gauntlet end zone. Its sleek design and solid build had all the hallmarks of being a heat winner, since I doubt Behemoth at this stage could have won without some shenaniganry. Unfortunately, Razor decided to shit the bed out of nowhere and break down under no pressure whatsoever. Even the team had no idea why it died on them. This could be a one-off event, and I'm sure Razor will never break down again and win the next 2 series back-to-back. Still, Razor was a standout robot for a series inundated with boxes and wheels and weapons that couldn't cut cheese, so to see a robot actually doing something and causing destruction as advertised by the show was a breath of fresh air.
No, Jen, it's infected. If this was a human being, I'd shoot it in the face.
People should know by now my taste in robots are trash and shouldn't be copied by any sane human being. All of this should lead to the obvious conclusion that Pièce de Resistance deserved a top 10 spot. Let me explain. The Team Death robots have always had a reputation of being some of the oddest, most poorly built entries in the series, but Pièce de Resistance is the only one to make it past the first round. Now, granted, that was due to Caliban sizing him against Sir Kill-A-Lot and getting his arse handed to it, but a victory's a victory, I guess. Sometimes it's fun just pointing and laughing at something that fails so spectacularly, so utterly incompetently, that I just can't hate it at all. This microwavable abomination is the biggest meme from this series, and may even be the entire show. A robot so confoundingly inept that not even knocking down even one brick or barrel just fills my heart with joy. I feel bad at laughing at it, but it always tickles me. Maybe that's a shallow reason to place it so high up, but screw it. I just never get over its ability to simply not do the one thing it was designed to do. 10 out of 10. No notes. Perfect robot.
So you got a tank. Big whoop. Want to fight about it?
The World War I inspired tank design for RoboDoc really makes it stand out and looks really intimidating. A lot of the tracked robots in this series are really slow and not very interesting looking, so it's appreciated that we got one with some personality and flair to the concept. It also had one of the few decent fights against King Ruxton, and kicked off a mini rivalry for the future series to come. It's a robot I have very little to talk about despite how high in the list it is, because I feel like a lot of its design speaks for itself. Very imposing and decent pacing for me, made it go very high and a very, very competitive design on top of it. I kind of wish 101 was more interesting, since it's not a robot I've really cared about that much, despite how much I like the robot after it in Anarchy. But then again, 101 was more successful, so maybe I know nothing. I just like it a lot.
Leebot? Pepperbot? You could pour pepper out of that Leebot machine!
Some robots suffer from an issue that the design is so much cooler than the robot's performance itself, and not one of those exemplifies it much better than Leviathan. Not only is it a top tier pun, but it also looks so cool. From the large imposing front scoop to the rear chainsaw and its overall tank-like design, makes it stand out a lot from a lot of boxiness present in the early series. Plus, going from a silver coffin woodlouse thing with a pathetic lance that got bodied by Mortis to a more serious looking entry gets my approval. It's a shame the robot wasn't all that good at fighting, but it did take a fair amount of blows from the house robots, and still managed to survive in its own power to a judge's decision. Even the top half of it scalped. But for Series 2, that's very admirable.
Not bad at all.
I've still never made a joke about Penetrator's name, and I intend to honour that agreement. It's just too easy. I'm beneath that kind of cheap innuendo. Penetrator is a solidly constructed robot with features I think go over most people's heads for how impressive it was for a forgotten robot in Series 2. For starters, the armour on this thing was top notch. They put interlocking metal plates throughout the bodywork, meaning that it was essentially double protected from damage, and gave it resilience that very few at the time had. Also, its weapon, while a simple angle grinder, came out of the chassis in a cool motion, rather than simply being a static sword that was a dime a dozen then. I don't know. I just liked it was a necessary but a cool addition for some added flair. It overall looked like some kind of military device that was turned into a robot, and I think it stood out despite only appearing in one series. It's a shame he never returned, since I would love to see him improve on it. But I guess it's best to pull out before it's too late. Wait, what did I just say?
Kneel before your king.
For someone who just praised Leviathan for not being in the box on wheels, looks like I placed King Buxton higher, huh? Well, to my credit, King Buxton was a very powerful robot for the time. It managed to outshunt Alltalk, a robot defined by its strength, and had two really good fights against Robodoc and Roadblock, and the team made a simple yet effective design that got to the top 8. It gave Roadblock a run for its money, and if it hadn't overheated, I think it would have taken the then reigning champions to a judge's decision, and might have even won. Something like that can't be said for many other well-made robots in this list, so I've got to give it a lot of credit. I've always loved the King Bee series of robots, and this is where it all started. Doing what it does best, King Buxton was impressive, and I think it could be in a contender for the crown. You know, because it's King Buxton, crown. Get it? I'll shut up now.
My name? P-Tier... Griffin. Peter Griffin. Crap.
Britain's answer to Biohazard. Griffin was a robot I think deserved a lot more than it got. A robot purely made for fighting, its linear-actuated arm was powerful enough to flip over an entire house robot, as proved in its performance in the Internet Insurrection. It had all the markings of a Heat winner with that power, but sadly it had to debut in Series 2. A series that took competitive bots and pushed them through an obstacle course they weren't built for. In fairness though, the driving for all of the steeples wasn't the best in this round, easily crashing into walls and letting himself get pinned by multiple house robots at once. Sadly, this led to Griffin's early exit from the series, and it wouldn't improve its reputation in the following one either, since it fumbled its way through a dull fight against Daisy Chopper, and lost to Cerberus in less than 5 seconds, never to be seen or heard from again. Some things are not meant to be. Still, I like it for what it is, even if its biohazard inspiration is worn on its sleeve.
I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
I bet you no one hates Cassius or its creator Rex Garrett. The man was a veritable legend in the series, and even though he never returned after Series 3, is still remembered fondly by both fans and Roboteers alike. His previous entry, Recyclops, was a goofy and effective front hinge flipper, and he decided to refine the concept to create Cassius this series. It was powerful, efficient, incredibly quick, and true to Rex's sportsmanship, would never leave an opportunity to take on the house robots once his opponent was defeated. It was always entertaining to watch, from the first ever self-right to its impressive flipping capabilities, meant that the sleek design could be backed up with the power. The robot's reputation as a series favourite never felt like bluster, unlike the producer's hard-on for Mortis that felt Rex Garrett was forever humble and always willing to congratulate the Panic Attack team when he was defeated, oh so close to that coveted series title. We all love Cassius, we'll always love Rex, and I'll never place this any lower on this list.
We are trained professionals! Now stay calm, we are going around the leaf.
The top 3 on my list all share a common trait of being goofy, yet having a lot of personality to boot. Millie Anbug's design is so unique. The articulated body that has never been replicated on any other robot before or since, and, while cumbersome, worked a lot better than it had any right to. It shouldn't have even been able to move that properly, but it seemed to drive fine. The hairdo was so cute, especially when it was given a makeover between rounds, making it the only robot to have a hairstylist as far as I'm aware. It also had funny moments, from getting one in the eye from Shunt, to the team carving teardrops onto her chassis when she was eliminated, and horrendous treatment on the football pitch. I swear everyone just ganged up on her for some reason, yet they seem to love Elvis more. It was a fix, I tell you. I love her odd design, and I wish the hair remained for future installments, but the multicoloured scheme later on was also very striking. I've always had a weird love for Millie Anbug. It struck that right balance of silliness and surprising effectiveness, making her a robot I'll always adore. Unique, funny, and absolutely fashionable. What's to hate about this bug?
I was just acting in self-defence and something happened to Sergeant Bash, but I hope he'll be alright.
So you do not hope you'll be alright, you fibber?
Wheelosaurus was the first ever thwackbot in the series, and it certainly made an impression. Firstly, those damn Victorian pram wheels were such an unnecessary addition, yet it gave the robot identity that made it stand out. Secondly, just like other robots previously, it had that scrap aesthetic that will always make me like a robot and looks like something out of an ancient civilization. Lastly, the thing could cause damage, as it managed to rip off the gas canister of Sergeant Bash by a complete accident, of course, but it still damaged a house robot, which in this era is very impressive. Wheelosaurus' personality was all down to the mind of Peter Gibson, who created such a beast of a wacky design. It's kind of a pioneer of both budgeted designs and for the future Thwackbots like Stinger. So there's a lot to appreciate in hindsight for a funny yet monstrous machine. I really wanted to place Wheelosaurus at the #1 spot, I really did. But one entry stood out above all the rest, and it was destined to be there. There was no competition. Some places on this list were seemingly arbitrary, some could change over time. However, the #1 spot was never in contention. Megahertz is the funniest, weirdest, and overall oddest machine in the series, and that's why it'll forever stand out to me. They took a computer-themed robot and went all out for it. The keyboard lifter, the literal mouse, the goofy yet worried expression on the monitor, and of course, that stupid functional CD tray on the front. I mean, why did they even put that there? There was no logical reason for it to be there other than the theme, and I bloody respect that. I can't get over how they went all out with this design, and I respect that they went out to not make a very competitive robot, since this thing would have lost badly in the arena, but rather more something memorable and fun. I like competitive designs. I also like well-engineered machines that can do well in fights, but I'll always prioritise robots that go for that X factor, with the aesthetics that simply meant it looks awesome and not necessarily meant to win. Megahertz exemplifies my personal feelings on that design philosophy. Weird, wacky, and all-round odd, Megahertz gets the #1 spot on my ranking of every Series 2 robot. And that was the list. Feel free to disagree with any entries I put on, and let me know where were you to place them higher or lower. And just remember, this was a silly list I thought of because it'd be a fun concept. Don't take this too seriously. I mean, this series ended almost 30 years ago. Don't get mad at me if I didn't rank box #1 higher than wedge #3. Anyway, like, comment, and subscribe. You never know, I might make another video. At some point. Jim Dramatic, signing out.